It is 2400 BCE. A farmer named Ur-amma is standing in front of a temple scribe in the city of Nippur. 6 months ago, he borrowed 30 sacks of barley from the temple. He needed seed grain. It was a dry spring. His family needed to eat. The drought took most of his harvest. He came back with 11 sacks. The scribe doesn't look up. He presses a reed into wet clay. He calculates the interest. 33%. The rate the temple set 400 years ago, and never questioned since. He reads the total back to Ur-amma.
Ur-amma cannot pay. By the end of the week, his land belongs to the temple. His tools belong to the temple. His eldest son will work off the remaining balance, not as an employee, as a slave. This is not a story from a novel. Archaeologists have found thousands of tablets exactly like this one, in the ruins of Ur, in the ruins of Nippur, in the ruins of Lagash. The oldest financial records in human history are not stories of commerce or trade. They are stories of people who could not pay. And here is what should stop you cold. The system that destroyed Ur-amma's family in 2400 BCE runs on the exact same logic as the notification you dismissed on your phone this morning.
To understand how that happened, you have to understand what came before it. Your brain is approximately 300,000 years old. The financial system that broke Ur-amma is 5,000 years old. That gap is the entire story. In 2014, neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger ran a study at UCLA. She placed participants in an fMRI scanner. She showed them their bank balances dropping. The regions of the brain that activated were identical to those that fired during physical pain. Not stress, not mild discomfort. Physical pain. Your brain cannot tell the difference between losing money and being physically injured. It treats both as a survival emergency. Because for 295,000 years, they were exactly the same thing.
For nearly all of human history, resources were not numbers. They were objects. Meat that existed today and was gone tomorrow. Roots that had to be found again every season. Fire that needed feeding every night. You could not store them indefinitely. You could not abstract them. You could use them or share them. Those were the only two options. Anthropologist Marshall Sahlins spent years living alongside hunter-gatherer societies in the 1960s. The Hadza in Tanzania, the Juhuanzi in Namibia, the Martu in Australia. He found that adults in these groups spent roughly 15 to 20 hours per week on survival activities. Not 40, not 50, 15 to 20. The rest of the time belonged to them. And here is what they did with it.
They gave things away, not out of sentimentality, not out of moral virtue, because giving was the only rational strategy in a world where nothing could be stored for long. If you killed more meat than your family could eat, you shared the rest with the camp. Not as charity, not as a trade, as the only logical move available. Because the person you fed today was the person who would feed you when your next hunt failed. Because the family you helped shelter this winter would help shelter yours. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar established precisely why this system worked so cleanly. The human brain can maintain stable social relationships with approximately 150 people. That is the cognitive ceiling. In a band of 50, you knew everyone. You knew who worked hard
You knew who shared without being asked. You knew who found reasons not to. Reputation was the currency. Memory was the ledger. The community was the bank. If a hunter consistently kept the best cuts for himself, people stopped inviting him on hunts. If a family took from the communal fire and never added wood, they found themselves cold. No enforcement required, no courts, no contracts. The system regulated itself through the oldest technology humans ever built: talking about each other. Then, approximately 10,000 years ago, something changed. Humans in the Fertile Crescent began farming. Populations grew. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. And cities destroyed the only financial system that had ever truly worked for human beings. In a city of 8,000 people, you could not know everyone. You could not read a stranger's reputation. You could not trust your memory of their history. The social ledger that had functioned for 290,000 years became useless. Something had to replace it. Here is what replaced it. And this is the part that almost no one teaches. Most people assume money came before debt, that humans bartered goods and eventually invented coins to simplify trading. Economist David Graeber spent 20 years reviewing the historical record. He found this sequence never actually occurred. Coins appeared around 600 BCE. The clay tablets of Sumer date to 3000 BCE. Records of obligations with no physical money at all predate even those. Debt came first. Not coins, not barter, not trade. The very first financial instrument in human history was a written record of what one person owed another. And from the very beginning, it carried interest. Now here is the part that should genuinely disturb you. For decades, economists assumed the Sumerian interest rate of 33% on grain loans reflected some kind of market logic, a natural equilibrium that emerged from supply and demand. Economist Michael Hudson spent 40 years studying ancient debt records. His conclusion was different. The rate was set arbitrarily by temple administrators for purely bureaucratic reasons, because 33% divides cleanly into the Sumerian base 60 number system. It was chosen because it was easy to calculate on a clay tablet. The interest rate that sits at the foundation of every mortgage, every credit card, every student loan in the modern world is descended from a number a Sumerian accountant chose in 3000 BCE because it simplified his arithmetic. There is no natural law behind it. There is an accountant behind it, working by oil lamp, pressing a reed into clay. Now comes the part that economists rarely discuss. The same rulers who invented this debt system also knew it was eating their civilization alive. Here is how we know. Beginning around 2400 BCE, Mesopotamian kings began issuing periodic royal proclamations called Ondurarum. The word means, in Akkadian, clean slate. The king would announce that all personal debts were canceled. All land seized for unpaid debt would be returned to its original owners. All people enslaved for debt would go free immediately. This was not a one-time act of generosity. It happened regularly. Nearly every new king who took the throne in Mesopotamia issued a clean slate proclamation within the first year of his reign. For over 1,000 years. Hammurabi issued one. Rimsin of Larsa issued one. Ammi-Saduqa issued one. The reason was not compassion. The reason was survival. Without a periodic reset, too many farmers fell into debt slavery. Too much agricultural land concentrated in the hands of creditors, and not enough people remained free to grow food. The economy contracted. Armies went unfed. Cities began to fail. So the king canceled the debts, freed the slaves, returned the land, and bought another generation of stability before the cycle started again. These rulers understood something that has since been deliberately forgotten. Debt, left unchecked, does not grow an economy. It devours one. So they built a circuit breaker directly into the system. It worked for 1,000 years. Then, the circuit breaker was removed. The last time anything resembling a debt jubilee happened in the Western world was 1931. Germany suspended its war reparation payments. Not out of principle, because the alternative was total civilizational collapse. Today, the concept is treated as radical, dangerous, irresponsible. In ancient Mesopotamia, it was considered basic governance, the minimum required maintenance for a functioning society. In 1694, the Bank of England was founded, not to serve the population, to finance a war. In 1913, the U.S. Federal Reserve was established, not as a public institution, as a private banking entity with the authority to issue currency in the form of debt. In 1974, credit cards became available to ordinary consumers for the first time. For the first time in history, you could borrow money to purchase things that no longer existed by the time the bill arrived. In 2008, the global financial system came within hours of total collapse, under the weight of debt instruments so complex that the people selling them could not explain what they were selling. The response was not a jubilee. It was not a clean slate. It was not a cancellation. Banks received trillions in public funds. Ordinary people received foreclosure notices. Ur-amma lost his land to the temple in 2400 BCE because a drought took his harvest. In 2008, millions of people lost their homes to banks because a financial system collapsed under its own complexity. The scribe just has better software now. This is not an argument that the modern world is pure extraction with nothing to show for it. We have vaccines. We have antibiotics. We have surgical techniques that would have looked like miracles 2 centuries ago. Child mortality that once claimed roughly 4 out of every 10 children before age 5 now claims fewer than 1 in 20. These are genuine wins, enormous ones. No one serious is suggesting we return to digging sticks and barley loans. But we stopped doing the one thing that even the kings who built this system understood was necessary to keep it from consuming everything underneath it. We stopped resetting. We let the debt compound, generation after generation, without a jubilee, without a clean slate, without any mechanism to stop the accumulation before it reached the foundations. That tightness in your chest when the balance is lower than it should be? That quick mental calculation you run when a friend suggests somewhere expensive for dinner? That 3 a.m. arithmetic where you add up what you owe and subtract it from what you have? That is not a character flaw. That is not poor financial discipline. That is a 300,000-year-old nervous system responding to a 5,000-year-old trap that even the people who built it knew had to be periodically dismantled. The Sumerians had a word for what you actually need. Ondurarum. Clean slate. They did it every generation because they understood that without it, the system consumed the people it was supposed to serve. We just forgot to keep doing it. And somewhere in the ruins of Nippur, pressed into a clay tablet that survived 4,000 years, is the record of a man named ur-amma who couldn't pay 30 sacks of barley back with interest. His son worked off the debt. His grandson started the whole cycle over again.